This is the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call this meeting to order. We have 3 hours for today's meeting to discuss 11 items. May I remind members that if there is direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to items for discussion today, please disclose the nature of the interest before you speak in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. May I also remind members about the voting requirements in Rule 84 of the ROP regarding direct pecuniary interest. Item 1, FCR 2018-19-26. This item seeks approval of recommendations of the Establishment Subcommittee made at this meeting held on the 29th of May 2018. That is EC paper number 4, retention of 2 supernumerary posts of 1 AOSGB D3 and 1 AOSGC D2, and creation of 1 supernumerary post of AOSGC D2 in the Financial Services branch of the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau to provide suitable high-level policy steer and inputs to various major legislative policy initiatives. We have Mr. Eddie Cheung, Deputy Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, and Ms. Winnie Ng, Deputy Secretary. First, let's start with Dr. KK Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question on the AOSGC Grade B and Grade C in relation to money lenders and financing business. I'd like to ask about the policy issue. In my ward office at the district level, I've received many inquiries relating to money lenders and financial companies. Well, earlier, in relation to the role of intermediaries, the government introduced legal framework to impose regulations. Yet we continue to receive cases involving fraud through the work of intermediaries or financial companies involving large sums of money. For example, using unfair lending agreements. I understand that this post will be retained. But in relation to all sorts of FCs and money lenders in the market and their unscrupulous practices, what do you expect this role to take up as part of his work? And the relevant legislative exercise, will they be introduced within the term of this post to be retained? If so, what kind of legislation will be involved? Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dr. KK Kwok, for your questions. Relating to malpractices in the money lending business, on the 5th of February this year, we consulted the panel on financial affairs and we gave a very detailed briefing. And let me give you a very succinct reply. In relation to malpractices by intermediaries of money lending, starting from 2016, we have rolled out a 4-pronged approach to tackle the issue. And Dr. KK Kwok just now asked about this post to be retained and the effectiveness of these measures. Now, the proposed post to be retained will take up the role of coordination. In fact, this colleague has been coordinating work in this regard, for example, liaising with different departments, the company registry, the police, and also our bureau staff. Regarding the 4 measures, they are set out in detail in the paper. As for the way forward, Dr. KK Kwok just now asked whether an undertaking can be given such that the legislative exercise can be completed within the term of extension of the post. And in fact, in the EC paper, we already briefed the members on the idea. Well, we have introduced a series of measures since 2016. But earlier, when we attended the meeting of the panel on financial affairs, we did agree that the further measures will be rolled out. But these measures do not relate to the legislative exercise. And we had the support of the Financial Affairs panel. And after attending the FA panel in February, we have begun to introduce by phases these further measures, and we believe that within the term of this post-extension, we'll be able to implement all the measures. But of course, we need to continue to monitor the effectiveness of the measures and see whether we need to introduce further measures so as to minimize the malpractices by intermediaries for money lending. Chairman, paragraph 16 of the paper, I believe, is what Deputy Secretary just mentioned. That is, through non-legislative means, measures are introduced to enhance the protection of borrowers. Now, regarding these administrative measures, is it like what the paper says? For example, regarding referees and the pro forma, I really don't have much confidence. I do hope that there will be legislation put in place to regulate the money lenders and the intermediaries in terms of their practices, in terms of unfair contracts. There should be legislation. If, like you said, you're not going to enact legislation to step up regulation, I don't agree. Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Kwok, for your question. Regarding whether it is necessary to legislate on the matter, we have given it quite some thought as to why we don't need to enhance those measures through legislative means. In fact, we have given a very detailed explanation at the panel. We've heard Dr. Kwok's views. However, we'll continue to monitor the situation, and if need be, as I mentioned, further measures will be introduced. Mr. Adiju, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I see that there are 3 polls proposed, and for 2 of these polls, they are related to the AIIB, and I'd like to have a question on that. When I check the AIIB's website, in December 2017, 1,001 items were endorsed in relation to improving the air quality in Beijing. I think there's a financing portfolio with some $200 input from the AIIB. My question for the administration is this. As a member of the AIIB, to your understanding, will it be necessary for Hong Kong to take out loans from AIIB to carry out projects? Because I'm looking at this Beijing example. I don't understand why a loan has to be taken out with the AIIB. Is it because the AIIB isn't doing much business, so that we need to create some projects to keep the money flowing? I'd like to have your understanding on the issue. Can you just answer that first, Deputy Secretary? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Adiju, for your question. Regarding AIIB, on a regular basis, we report to the panel on financial affairs, and regarding Mr. Ediju's question on financing projects of the AIIB, I do not have information about individual projects. If necessary, I can make inquiries with the AIIB after the meeting and give information to Mr. Ediju. But simply put, the mechanism is as follows. We joined the AIIB last year, and as a member, we needed to take out capital, and we needed the support of the Legislative Council. So the justifications and our involvement with the AIIB were explained to the panel in great detail at the time. Regarding the individual projects mentioned by Mr. Ediju, I do not have information at hand. I need to do some research after the meeting first. Thank you. You don't need to go into the specific projects. I recalled at the time when you sought funding from LegCo for injection into AIIB, the version is not use Hong Kong as you use a platform for financing for Hong Kong's activities, but that if necessary, we can have input from professionals in Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong can become a base. So my first question is, to follow up on this, if Beijing has a project that uses the financing facility of AIIB, will it be also possible for Hong Kong? That's the first question. Second question, you mentioned before the benefits brought about by AIIB on the various industries in Hong Kong. I want to know whether they are really that beneficial, because the post, say paragraph 21 of the paper, suggests that we have been liaising with the AIIB on rendering support to its operation by leveraging on Hong Kong's strengths in financial services and our status as an international financial center. Can you elaborate on this sentence? Deputy Secretary. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Ediju, for the question. Regarding whether Hong Kong can possibly apply for financing with AIIB, we don't have any plan at the moment. That's the first question. Second question, Mr. Ediju's understanding is correct. Regarding the justification of Hong Kong's participation in the AIIB, some of the benefits are whether the financial services or professional services can be leveraged on in the financing activities of the AIIB, or whether, well, right, you don't need to read it out. I'm asking whether or what indeed you have done. Tell us tell us if you've done anything. We've just joined the AIIB for less than a year, and meanwhile, we have been duly performing our role as a member by attending AIIB meetings, and we also actively promote Hong Kong as an international financial center, and we can be used as a financing platform or investment base. 4 minutes, Dr. KK Kwok. Chairman, I am interested to find out about this. Deputy Secretary mentioned that we have been participating in the work of the AIIB, and I assume that these tasks are important. I'd like to know how many meetings have been held, such as the executive committees and other committees, so that we can have a picture or an understanding how heavy the workload is. The second question is paragraph 22 of the paper, which goes to say that starting from April 2018, the ADB portfolio has been transferred from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority to the FSTB.
Well, first I would like to ask about the reason for such an arrangement. The Hong Kong MA is not a private company, but it's fully subsidized by the government, so we actually pay it. So are there any plans to reduce the number of senior staff members that are involved in AIIB? Because, well, probably you're paying them tens of millions of dollars. If this portfolio is changed to the FSTB, there must be an important reason. So 3 questions. Thank you. I thank Dr. Kwok for the 3 questions. The first one is, so far, how many meetings we have had related to the AIIB. For the Council, there are 3, and there is an annual meeting of the AIIB. There will be another one coming up. The portfolio related to AIIB under the Hong Kong MA will be transferred to us, and whether there is any reduction of manpower, we have to ask the Hong Kong MA. As far as I understand, apart from the AIIB, there are other duties. In relation to the third question, why is the portfolio transferred? Well, Hong Kong joined AIIB since the 2017, and the work is under the responsibility of the FSTB. AIIB and the Asian Development Bank are both international financial bodies. There is a need for the portfolio of the Asian Development Bank to the FSTB. AIIB has started its work, and they have started running subsidized program. Does it mean that in the future there will be loan facilities under the Asian Development Bank? Is there a need to inject fund into the Asian Development Bank? And if that's a yes, how much will that be? Does it mean that if there is any reduction to the capital injection into the Asian Development Bank, it will go to the AIIB? The Asian Development Bank and the AIIB are separate multilateral banks. So any input will be done separately, and we will make separate financial application to the LegCo. The Asian Development Bank ADB may require injection, but every time we will come and offer detailed explanation to the LegCo. When was the last injection and how much was it? That is in relation to the ADB. Just give me a few seconds. It's the 3rd of January 2017. At that time, there was an FSTB paper. I'm just referring to that paper. That is the 11th supplementary funding allocation to the ADB for 2017-18 to 2026-27. That will be the first supplementary funding allocation, which is 17.4 million US dollars. There was a discussion in that panel. As far Mr. Kenny Flo, as far as I understand that from the FSTB there has been some staff members who have been seconded to the AIIB. How many of them are there? And if there is still such secondment, will it affect the daily operation of the FSTB? The second question is a supplementary about the rumored opening of an office of the AIIB in Hong Kong. So how is your liaison work in this regard? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Leung's understanding is that the Hong Kong SAR government has seconded 2 staff members to the AIIB. It will not affect the operation of the Bureau. On the other hand, it will actually benefit both parties. Mr. Leung is very familiar with our work. The opening of offices outside Beijing, our government has been trying to make that happen. Our work continues. I have a question. For the 2 seconded staff, what's their specific duties in Beijing? How can it be complementary to the Bureau in Hong Kong? Thank you. One of the 2 is an administrative officer. The other one is a treasury accountant. On one hand, we second staff members to other offices to broaden their horizon. And on the other hand, AIIB is something new to Hong Kong. With Hong Kong staff members stationed in their office, we will be able to get first-hand information of what they need and whether Hong Kong will be able to meet that need and whether our industry can be promoted to participate. Next, Mr. Ao Nok Kin. Good afternoon, Chairman. I would like to ask paragraph 21. It says that we've been liaising with the AIIB on rendering support to its operation by leveraging on Hong Kong's strengths in financial services and our status as an international financial center. In the past year, this post and the team, what support has it rendered to the AIIB and in what way? And it also says that there is regular attendance to the Board of Directors meetings and annual meetings. So how many times have you attended such meetings and what was the discussion? For some of the questions that have already been asked by other members, I'll give a brief reply. We provide support in different ways. First, meetings. The meetings are not attended by the colleagues, but they will be by a senior echelon of the government. Sometimes it's the financial services, sometimes it's the secretary or the secretary of the bureau. There is an annual meeting of the AIIB. There are also some board of directors meetings, which is on a quarterly basis. So the staff members will provide support services to ministers attending the meeting. And as I've mentioned before, after we have joined the AIIB, we hope to bring business opportunities for our industry. We'll liaise with the AIIB. Say, for example, we want to attend meetings, we'll talk to them. If they want to come to Hong Kong, we will liaise with them. We'll try to get AIIB to make use of Hong Kong because we are a financial center. By having them consider Hong Kong, there will be business opportunities. We have supplied a lot of information to the relevant panel. If members are interested, I am happy to give you detailed information and explanation. If you ask if I'm interested, then yes, I'm interested in the AIIB. AIIB plays a very important role in taking Hong Kong to the international arena. When we approve funding allocation and input of human resources in the work of the AIIB, it was about a year ago. Now, we need to discuss whether to continue these posts. But I haven't heard much about what they have done in the past year and whether their work is cost effective. And that's why I asked those questions. I would like to get more relevant information. Last year, when there was a funding application from the LegCo of $6 billion, there has been a series of undertakings, say, for example, a number of benefits that Hong Kong will reap. They say that once Hong Kong is a member, we can ask the AIIB to collect statistics and data about Hong Kong companies and consultants that have successfully bid for contract and ask the AIIB to release information about policies. In the end, has the government actually done these things? That is, to make requests for information data from the AIIB? If not, will you enhance your work along this line? Well, if it is more of a policy issue, you may ask the questions in a panel. We should focus on the finances here. Thank you, Mr. Au, for the question. In short, when it comes to project data, I have given the undertaking in a panel meeting. We have followed up our work. We have to liaise with the AIIB. We have been following this up, and hopefully we'll be able to get the information. Dr. Kokaki, speaking for the third time, I support this item. However, I am quite concerned about the future of the AIIB. In the past 6 years, some countries, including Australia and the US, have expressed grave concern about the loan facilities offered by the AIIB. The Australian government has recently condemned the Chinese government for malicious loan to Belt and Road countries. Because they would like to make use of the loans they have offered to South Pacific countries in order to influence these countries. If we're so close to the AIIB, and if the AIIB is seen as a body with political ambition, has the government done any assessment as to the merits and shortcomings of being so cozy to the AIIB? And if in the future the AIIB is boycotted by other countries, will you adjust the involvement of Hong Kong in the AIIB? And if you need to do an assessment, should you not do it now? Because we're talking about a looming crisis. The AIIB are now seen in a hostile light by Western countries. Listen. When the decision was made to join the AIIB, assessments have been done. We'll monitor the situation. At this stage, we'll remain in the AIIB. Dr. Kwakaki talked about our involvement. Before we joined the AIIB, we had to subscribe some capital shares. There are certain requirements if you want to join. Based on the size of your economy, you're required to subscribe a certain number of capital shares. We got the consent of the LegCo and obtained a funding commitment.
Yes, I fully understand that. I was there in the meeting. But nowadays we see drastic changes in the global politics, and that is why I'm asking you whether you have conducted any assessment in the light of what's happening around the world. If you haven't, you should do it. Please switch on his mic. Thank you, Chairman. Because this will affect our status as the International Financial Center. And if such an assessment has been done, I'd like to have some details. Or you haven't done it and you're going to do it within this year, so that our status as the International Financial Center can be protected. Yes. A very brief reply. Of course, we'll keep a close eye on the development. For example, we do keep an eye on the number of projects approved by the AIIB and the amount. I understand that 25 financing projects have been approved so far, and they're mostly collaborating projects with other multilateral banks. Next, Mr. Jeremy Tam, 5 minutes. Chairman, I have a question about the paper. An AOSGC post should be created, and I'm referring to paragraph 25 and 26 regarding this AOSGC post. and this post holder will be dealing with the EMPF. Is that right? Correct. All right, thank you. Then my question is this. Now, paragraph 28 of the paper mentions that EMPF is technically complicated. So my question is, once you have launched the EMPF, that means you'll be setting up a platform for funds and you're going to streamline procedures. So in this context, I wonder if you have any agreement with banks about the charges to be paid for using the platform, or whether the administrators' fees would have to be reduced. Yes. Well, thank you very much. And in fact, it's a very valid question, and you have make a very crucial point. The purpose of the EMPF as a platform is to reduce administrators' fees, because in 2012 a survey was conducted, and it was found that the administration system accounted for a large proportion of the administrative costs. That is because we have 14 different trustees and there is duplication of work. We therefore propose to centralize the process so as to achieve efficiency. But the ultimate goal is to reduce the cost. And after introducing the EMPF, we will adopt a cost recovery principle and charge each trustee for the administrative fees for using the platform. Well, that's just my suggestion. Of course, I support the EMPF platform, but I have a question. That means after rolling out the platform, you're going to charge these 14 trustees the administrative fees. But what about the perspective of the public? How are you going to lower the fees to be paid by public? Because you may levy a charge, and they may pay the levy because it may be better if you handle the administrative matters. Say, for example, using EMPF, the cost may be just $4. Well, that means they would pocket $6. Or is it that it will be levied on the basis of the number of scheme members? That means the number of employees. Otherwise, you'll be benefiting these trustees instead of individual employees. Yes, thank you, Mr. Tam, for your questions. Now, about reduction of cost, it is not as described by Mr. Jeremy Tam. We have very high costs at the moment because we have paper-based transactions. That means at the moment, when employers make mandatory contributions, they need to submit remittance statements. That is, they need to calculate the monthly contributions made to employees, and this is a paper-based transaction with checks written out, and the cost could be $30, $40. And we also have correspondence, which is paper-based, and the meaning of the EMPF is to go paperless. And using automated process, we can reduce the costs incurred as a result of paper-based transactions and dealings. So that would be the major source of savings. So about the savings, how will employees benefit from it? Because, in other words, you are streamlining the procedure for banks. So the company or the banks are benefited, not individuals. Well, in short, after introducing this platform, we'll be able to get an idea of the administrative cost of the central platform, and then we can discuss with the trustees on the possible room of lowering the charges. We are not yet in a position to estimate the cost, so the focus of this post is how, by creating this post and setting up a central platform, we can lower the charges. Mr. Eddie Ju, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. About the 2 posts to be retained, one is DS, the other is PAS, and their portfolio is quite wide in scope. For example, about the reform of independent regulators of audit or auditors, and also AIIB and corporate rescue procedure. And I'd like to ask about FinTech, which is under the portfolio of these 2 post holders. Well, this paper sets out quite briefly their portfolios. And regarding FinTech, that is mostly contained in paragraph 19 and 20. And in paragraph 20, there are a lot of priority areas. For example, working with FinTech companies to ensure that the sector is adequately supported, including funding. And in the speech delivered by the Chief Executive in a FinTech forum in Bay Area, it is said that there is a number of schemes such as a voucher scheme and enterprise support scheme and various financial support schemes. So I have a feeling that in terms of all the funding support, these schemes are devised by the IT Bureau. So I'd like to ask about the division of work, in particular regarding FinTech. If they require funding, it usually comes under the IT Bureau. So why is it under the FSTB instead of the ITB? Yes, thank you, Mr. Eddie Ju, for your question on FinTech. Just now, Mr. Ju asked about a lot of funding schemes which are under the IT Bureau's portfolio. Well, Mr. Eddie Ju's understanding is correct. Technology is wider than FinTech. FinTech is just one of the branches of technology. Now, the FSTB is in charge of financial matters, so FinTech comes under our purview. But indeed, like Mr. Eddie Ju said, there is overlapping. And it is true that some issues may involve different policy bureaus. Now, about this post holder, his work on FinTech is not limited to funding, because usually, regarding funding, support will be provided by the IT Bureau. Whereas for this division, on a regular basis, we attend meetings of different panels. For example, in April and May this year, we prepared a very detailed paper on our work in FinTech. And Mr. Ju, if you're interested in our FinTech portfolio, after the meeting, I'd like to exchange ideas with you and hear your view on the matter. Next, Mr. Ao-Lok-Him, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I have a second round, and my question is on the participation in the AIIB and the ADB. Well, all along, our understanding is that the ADB is led by Japan and the United States, whereas the AIIB is led by the mainland. So when there was a funding application for $6 billion for Hong Kong to join the AIIB, our understanding is that we should be on the mainland side to help with some international financing activities. But in fact, if this is about saving mainland's economy, we could just directly inject funds to buy ZTE shares. So when it comes to financial input to the AIIB, we need to think about return. When we join the AIIB and the ADB, what is the return for us? I'm concerned because, Chairman, and I do think that this concern is valid, because all along figures have been provided as of the end of 2015, for example, according to the ADB. Regarding procurement contracts and consultancy services for Hong Kong professionals, the amount stood at $961.7 billion. So it's really hard to gauge the economic benefits. I wonder if the government has looked into the correlations of these figures regarding AIIB and ADB, and I think the public is also concerned about this. That is, what good does it do to our local economy? What benefit are we talking about? 26 projects with a total loan amount of $4.5 billion. I wonder how much of that is related to Hong Kong. Thank you, member, for your interest in AIIB and ADB. Similarly, this is a policy issue, and let me very briefly respond to your question. Our participation in the AIIB and the ADB is not simply there with a goal of monetary return. Well, very often in some projects there might be profits and return, but rather than paying dividends to the participating countries, usually the profits and returns will be plowed back for other projects. Now, the member asked whether how much Hong Kong benefits from it. This question was actually asked by another member. At the moment, we are striving for more data from the AIIB because the data is with them. We need to ask for the data, and members may be concerned about the number of projects of AIIB with Hong Kong's participation, and as I said, we're actively liaising with AIIB. If the government is truly concerned about this, then the figures should be provided. That is to say, we put in $6 billion, and I'm not just talking about monetary return. It is a platform for, say, local or mainland enterprises to go global. Chairman, I hope to supplement the following point.
There are two organizations. Say, for example, when it comes to Sino-USJ, we tell them that, we are a separate entity. Has the government considered progress in this regard? Can you make sure that Hong Kong plays a role in relation to the financing projects of the two banks? Well, we don't have sufficient time. Perhaps I can have detailed discussion with Mr. Au because it involves topics related to high-level decisions. That's a very good suggestion. Mr. Jeremy Tan, 4 minutes. I just want to ask about the EMPF. It was said that when the platform is established, we can further explore reduction of service fees. And I see that, when it comes to the main duties, three it is to deal with policy issues related to review of ceiling of fees. You said that with the platform you will charge MPF companies. But if you do that, how can you get them to reduce service charge? Well, if you have to sort out the policy, perhaps I will say this. If you want to make use of this government platform to subsidize, well, not exactly to subsidize, but to make sure that scheme members will benefit, then you should waive the fees and try to do some more about policy matters to get them to reduce fees. Or you may just adopt the user pay principle, and you draw a line that these 14 approved trustees can't charge more than a certain amount. How much in percentage terms can scheme members save in terms of a service charge? Do you have an idea now? I thank Mr. Tam for the question. I will need to clarify some concepts. If eMPF is to go ahead, it will greatly reduce cost, because currently there are a lot of transactions using paper. In 2012 we conducted an assessment. Why would you say 2012, 2022? Oh, sorry, it's 2012, but you said 2022. Oh, because our goal is to launch this in 2022. And in 2012, we have done a consultant assessment. It was about 2.1% at that time. And the administrative cost is about 1.75. You see, it's a lion's share. With eMPF, the 1.75% can be greatly compressed. So it's a saving. Mr. Tam has rightly put it. The government is willing to invest to build this eMPF. We will ask for funding approval from the LegCo. We have to charge to recover cost for the operation of the platform from the 14 approved trustees. Our work at the moment is to complete the technical specification of the eMPF. At this stage, it is difficult for us to make an estimate. We think that at the end of this year, we will have a general idea, and the way forward we will consult the FS panel. I'll be happy to make arrangements with Mr. Tam for a briefing session about the operation and our ideas. Mr. James Toll. I would like to follow up on the question asked by another member. You said that there is room for MPF fees to be reduced, say for example by way of making things paperless. You have made some endeavors. You have also publicized about consolidating accounts and the DIS, the default investment strategy. You have already saved cost. The MPF is mandatory. You mandate Hong Kong people to pay for this. Well, there are a dozen or so companies involved, and it seems that there is competition, and well, some of the fees have been reduced. Do you think that there is still room to push the fees further down? Do you think there is room for that to be pushed down further? It doesn't cost much to have this post compared to the overall savings. Even 0.1% is a large amount. It's just like you employ a few civil servants to help Hong Kong people get more money. If you say that if the current structure is fine, but they just want to have more people to do the work, is it the case that you really think that there is room to drive it further down? Yes, we think there is room to drive it further down. Where? Why do you think that is the case? There are a number of areas. First, administrative cost. We can automate and certain functions and also turn them into a proper system. And when the scale gets bigger, there is room to reduce cost. When we launched DIS, Mr. To may recall that we imposed a ceiling of charges. We said that we would conduct a review in 3 years, and our goal is to further drive down administrative fees. We hope that the fees will be lowered. I hope that with this post you will be able to tell whether you can reduce fees. You don't have to wait till something is done first. I'm sure you have already found a way to drive cost further down, or fees further down. Please remember, yes, it's etched onto my mind. Well, it's very strange because they only spent about 12 minutes on this in the ESC, but we've spent an hour on it now. Who else would like to speak? Otherwise, we will put it to the vote. Mr. Ao Nok Hin, 3 minutes. Mr. To talks about MPF, EMPF. I have this idea. You want to make use of an electronic platform to reduce cost. Our understanding of the fund is that there are many ways to reduce cost. Well, should it be semi-portable, or just give you many choices to choose from, or is just a pool? Say, for example, it will be linked with the investment of by the Hong Kong MA, because it will involve different costs. Will you consider different ways? And I'd like to ask another point. It's about the AIIB and the ADB. Well, you have seconded civil servants, not just creation of posts. But I don't see any reason why you should second civil servants to the banks. I've asked 2 rounds. You just say You just said that work is complicated without going into details. And you said that, well, you need more than creation of this post. You need to second civil servants to AIIB. So what are these? What is the work? And what is the indicators for value of money? Last year, when you sought funding approval, the FSTB said in their reply that secondment of civil servants to AIIB because there are a number of administrative and financial management systems at the beginning. Well, did that actually happen? I would first answer about EMPF. EMPF is mainly by way of private management. It's not about management of funds, but also management of the entire scheme. Say, for example, the trustees have statutory duty to chase employers if they don't make contributions. So there will be administrative cost. In 2017, the fund was 2.1%, and now is 1.5 or 1.6%. So a lot of work has been done by the government and the Hong Kong MA or the MPFA. But it is just a game for trustees and fund companies. The EMPF is still on the drawing board. You don't have to give so much details because it's still on the drawing board. Don't waste time. This is not a panel. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang. Yes? Well, what about the secondment? Thank you, Mr. Au. Another member asked, and I have already answered. Well, if Mr. Au is interested, please allow me to have a detailed exchange with you after the meeting. Dr. Fernando Zhang, 5 minutes, question and answers included. Well, this is related to the MPF reform. I understand that in the financial services branch, well, it is related to policy. At the same time, we have the MPFA. They have a lot of people in their administrative section. Over the years, I find that if you want to change certain things of the MPF system, it's like pulling teeth. Now you ask for creation or retention of posts. There is technical staff, there is manpower under the MPFA to give you information and conduct analysis.
And about making decisions, will these two posts really help with making decisions? Or is it that we have sufficient decision makers within the FSTB such that we don't need to keep these two posts? Can you explain to us? And if these posts are retained, once the reform is completed, is it really necessary to retain the posts further? Yes. Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for your question. Well, the Policy Bureau is tasked with legislative work, and all the proposals mentioned would need legislative amendments. Even for EMPF, we'll need to substantially revamp Part 4 of the ordinance. These posts is proposed to have a 3-year tenure, and once the work is completed, we will review whether it's necessary to further retain the post. A written reply if necessary. What about division of work with the MPFA? Well, legislative amendments is technical, and the MPFA has been the agent in implementing the ordinance. I wonder if the technical support can be provided by the MPFA or the Department of Justice. Would that suffice? Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for your question. The MPFA's terms of reference is to protect the scheme members' interests as mentioned in the ordinance, and our legislative work would involve the law drafting division of the DOJ, and we also have some policy considerations. For example, the DIS, default investment strategy, by how much should the fees be reduced, and the post holder will be supporting the bureau chief in making decisions. But the DIS is already in place. Isn't this part of work complete already? Right, in paragraph 30 of the paper, we mention that the default investment strategies fee cap level will be reviewed within 3 years after its implementation. All right, quiet. Let me say something first. How many more would like to ask questions? 1, 2, 3? It's still my time. All right, so these 3, and then we will wrap up the item. Mr. Ray Chen, 5 minutes. It's just a point of order. No, I have a question. Chairman, let me finish. But haven't you just... All right, I can give you a go, but Mr. Ray Chen would like to speak for the first round. So finish your question, and then we move on to the next one. Which one? Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. Just go ahead. I'd like to clarify this. Whether the decision... whether the paper that we're voting on relates to the CS4A office, I mean the private office, the about poverty alleviation, manpower planning. No, not included. All right, next. Mr. Ray Chen. Thank you, Chairman. We've discussed this item for an hour. I'd just like to express my views. I don't think the government will be able to answer me. At the ESC, I asked this question. The FSTB is proposing to create a post. I don't know why you don't create a post to look into the class action proposal. The answer was that the DOJ hasn't looked into class action, and the FSTB therefore had no portfolio to do so. Well, what about ZTE? The trading just resumed, and the stock plummeted by 40%, and the SFC has not actively looked into the matter. And if you also buy U.S. shares, you would know that class action is something to protect small investors. And according to a case, even after selling shares for a number of years already, a victim would receive a letter from a U.S. attorney inviting for class action to sue that stock company. I wonder why the government would not actively consider the U.S. class action model. Is it that the government is being very passive and the government is favoring these mainland enterprises on the public listing, which are very often accused of cooking the books? Yes. Well, in fact, as we replied last time, the DOJ is following up on the LRC's recommendation to introduce class action. Class action isn't just relating to the FSTB's ambit. It involves many sectors, and we also have given our advice to the DOJ on this matter. When will there be further news? Well, Chairman, I can go back and ask the Secretary for Justice and provide information to the Honourable Member, Mr. Chan. All right, Chairman, please note that, because he said he would give me a reply after getting an understanding from the Secretary of Justice for Justice, Mr. Elohim. Mr. Elohim? Yes, Chairman. Well, I don't think we can just let them off if they say that information will be provided after the meeting, because we ask about the KPI of the proposed polls. May I clarify which post are you talking about, Mr. Elohim? The post about handling the work of AIIB and ADB. Right. This is one of the tasks to be taken up by these two proposed posts, and as explained just now, Hong Kong's participation in the AIIB and ADB means assisting the relevant government officials with their work, and through participating in AIIB and ADB, we hope to bring benefits to the relevant industry, such as the financial industry. No, I'm asking this because you say that these government officials will attend meetings, but we don't know what meetings they are. And you haven't told us whether you have done what you said last year, and then you said that you can talk to me about that after the meeting. Why can't you just tell me at this meeting? Well, perhaps Mr. Ao isn't happy about my answer. Let me answer once again. You asked about the officers seconded, and my reply is that 2 colleagues have been seconded to the AIIB, as mentioned just now. One is at the EO grade. The other is a Treasury accountant from the Treasury, and as explained just now, the purpose of the secondment is to allow colleagues to familiarize themselves with the operation and to provide support to our colleagues there. Dr. KK Kwok, 2 minutes. Chairman, I hope you understand that we do support the proposal. We just want to ask more about the proposed post. According to paragraphs 19 and 20 of the paper, one of the responsibilities is to develop fintech. I suppose you're talking about the fast payment system, and I understand that this is one of the priorities of the Hong Kong MA, which will be undertaken by the Hong Kong MA. But I think that around the world we're also concerned about cybersecurity, including privacy. Well, in the mainland, we understand that with the development of the fast payment system, there is no personal privacy, so to speak, because the system stores all the data of the consumer, the consumption pattern, and we should consider the policy implications. And this post is very important from 2 angles in terms of personal data privacy and the transferability of technology. We need to enact legislation to regulate the operator or developer of these systems. And I'd like to know, in terms of protecting consumer rights, safeguarding consumers' rights, protection of users' data privacy, and portability of the data. I don't know whether you have thought about that in your legislative work. Otherwise, we are not reassured about this fast payment system. Thank you, Dr. Kwok, for your question on fast payment system. In short, it is a multi or cross-platform instant transfer service. Dr. Kwok is concerned about data privacy. Well, usually stored value system would be involved and a license would be required, which is under the relevant ordinances, And these SVF regulations also include provisions on protection of personal data privacy. All right, all questions have been asked. If there are no questions, I now put this to a vote, and that is EC 2018-19 number 4. Any divisions claimed? The bell will ring for 5 minutes.
Let me remind you that we're voting on retention of 2 posts and creation of 1 post under the Financial Services branch.
現在開始表決。
Voting begins. Voting closes. Result displayed. 47 for, 1 against, no abstention is carried. Next is FC 2018-19 number 22. This is to invite members to endorse the proposal made in the PWSC dated the 12th of May this year in relation to PWSC number 8. This is about the installation of air conditioning system in the Taiwan market, involving a number of $109.7 million. I am Director of the Bank of East Asia. We have with us to discuss this item Dr. Choi Tak-yi, Undersecretary for Food and Health. We have Mr. Ronick Chan. To improve the public market to provide a better environment for residents, of course I support that. But I would like to ask for some more details. In paragraph 14 of the paper, it says that in the Food and Environmental Hygiene panel, that, market closure period will be reduced from 8 months to no more than 7 months. During that 7 months, do you have other places to let traders to carry out their business elsewhere? When it comes to upgrading of projects, do you usually make arrangements to provide space for traders to operate their business elsewhere? Also, it says that there will be 6.7 recurrent expenditure, and it will be recovered on a user pay principle and cost recovery principle. That means you're going to get it back from the store owners. Will the rental be increased by, say, 20-30%? What is your estimate? Public markets offers choices to residents nearby, so prices of goods will not be as high as, say, a department store in the urban area. After the installation of aircon, you will increase the rent, and the rent will be reflected on goods prices. Will you consider setting a ceiling of the rent after revisions in order to prevent a huge increase of prices of commodities? Who is to take this question? I'll give some preliminary answer and I'll defer to my colleagues. For full closure, we provide in nearby places vacant stores in nearby public markets if store traders find them suitable. However, it may not be easy for them to start in a new place because of the requirement of installations of drainage, water supply, etc. So we will try to give them vacant stores to operate in if they so wish. Capital cost will be borne by the government, and in the future, if there is a need to replace the system, it will be also borne by the government. The operation of the public market is on a commercial basis. Well, it's not necessarily the case that goods sold in public markets are cheaper than other places. I'll defer to my colleague for other points. If tenants so choose, they can choose to operate in other public markets operated by the FEHD. Will charge them either the existing rental or 50% or 70% of the new public market, whichever is lower. The estimate of air conditioning cost. We need to wait till after the tender exercise before we know. All we have is initial estimate. We have found similar cases in existing markets so that we will have a general idea. Paragraph 23, I see some energy conservation measures. For the Kai Tak terminal and the Sanpo Kong public housing development, I see some energy conservation. It says that it will save 3% and 8 years. Here it says that the energy efficient features will achieve 7.6% energy saving and a payback period of 8.5 years. Why is there a difference? For different projects, the installations and energy conservation features are different. So the payback period and the construction cost will differ. If need be, I will provide details in relation to, say, for example, payback period. Mr. Gary Fan. I'm from NT East. I'm concerned about the highway market, but I'm not a member of the Food and Environmental Hygiene panel. That's why I can only ask questions here. On the 13th of March, that panel endorsed a motion expressing a concern about installation of air conditioning for 7 months at Taiwan market. They think that a short waiver of rental will not help them much. The motion urges the administration to consider providing compensation or compensation. I know that the government has set aside $2 billion for market modernization program. Does it include financial subsidy or compensation to affected tenants to help them tie over the difficult times when they can't operate? In 2018, the 2nd of May, we have given a detailed reply to the panel's motion. We have said that tenants, say in the first 10 months where they are just partially affected because it's not a full closure, they can get a 50% waiver of rent. During the 7-month full closure, they will enjoy full waiver of rent. 2 months after the project is completed, they can also enjoy a rent waiver. When they go back to the public market, they will find that the business environment will have improved. Well, this amount is not included in the $2 billion. The Taiwan project will go ahead after we've got this approval. For the $2 billion is on other markets. I hope that you need to set aside in market improvement programs a sum for compensation and subsidy to affected tenants. Would you consider that? We said that there will be a comprehensive review, and the subcommittee on issues related to public market will discuss that. We'll cover that as well in our review. Next, Mr. Shiu Kafai. Thank you. Well, we have been discussing about lack of air conditioning in public markets for a very long time. I'm sure that this will be supported by the general public, and so will I. I have asked a number of questions in the past, but I'd like to say them again. During the time when the project is being undertaken in the market, store operators will have to move out. So they enjoy a 2 months rent waiver after the work is completed, yes. And prior to that, for the 10 months, there'll be 50% waiver. For the full closure, 7 months is a full waiver. And when the work is completed, there'll be another 2 months waiver of rent. Last time there was a press conference and they have mentioned this. They would like to get more subsidy from the government. Because during the time when the project is being undertaken, they won't be able to make a living. Mr. Ronick Chan has touched on this. Can you give us more information as to the alternatives offered to these tenants? We have looked at vacant stores in markets operated by the FEHD. If tenants so wish, they can choose to operate in these vacant stores. We are happy to provide information and give them assistance. The closest public market to Taiwan is where? And you have a figure. What are these vacant stores? Wet goods, meat, fish? Yes, we do have the figures. If you draw a circle, well, we will exclude those operated by Link Rit. The closest one is Sha Tin. It's just one stop away. Consumers will have different alternatives. Number of vacant stores in Sha Tin public market may not be able to accommodate all 160 stores in the Taiwan market. So they may be asked to go to other public markets, not necessarily the closest one. Well, in that case, that means that some store owners will have to go to operate in a different district from where they work. They may choose to stop operation, and in that case, they won't get any income. Please give them assistance as far as possible. I believe that a majority of store owners support you, because they don't want to be stuck in a stuffy market without air conditioning.
So if you want to help them with rent. So think about it. How else can you give them support? Because I understand that it will take 6 or 8 months. So let's see what we can do to help them. But on the whole, I support this item. All right, noted. Next, Ms. Eunice Yong, 5 minutes. Chairman, I also support that there should be AC in markets. This is just basic facility for the vendors. And I understand that the closure will be reduced from 8 months to 7 months. In fact, we have reflected this view on different occasions. We hope that the FEHD public markets will be able to fight against the link REIT markets. I hope the FEHD could do that. Well, say in Sha Tin, in Kwong Yun market, this is a new link REIT market. Well, the closure only took place for 3 months before all the full-fledged AC system was installed with all the interior decoration completed. I, in fact, asked this question many times already. I don't understand why it takes 7 months closure, and not to mention the whole project taking 17 months. Of course, there are other works to be carried out, E&M, etc. I just want to know why it takes 17 months for the government to complete this project. And by comparison, why is it that another party was able to finish it in 3 months. Thank you, Ms. Yong, for your comments. It is true that we should shorten the closure period as much as possible so as not to affect the market vendors and the public as consumers. However, perhaps I can invite the AST to supplement as to why it takes 7 months at least. Thank you for the members' question, and let me explain. In relation to the retrofitting works in each project, they come with their own features. We need to consider, for example, the extent of alteration, whether noise, nuisance would be brought into the neighborhood, and whether we would be allowed, for example, in a project to take everything down before installing facilities again. And for this market in Taiwan, things are complex for the following reasons. For example, we have on top of the Taiwan market, it is a podium of a residential building. So in installing ACs, we need to consider that the ventilation should not be right next to the ceiling, but on the side. And because of the residential units upstairs, we need to remind contractors to be careful not to carry out works that may emit noise after 5 p.m. And for Taiwan market, part of the facilities would be kept, and this poses a constraint whilst we add facilities to the market. All these add to the difficulty of the project. In fact, at the subcommittee, we already explained the situation. We're going to shorten the closure period from 8 to 7 months, having heeded members' views. We actually went back to consider every aspect of the projects before coming up with a 7-month closure period. And let me explain, within the 7 months, apart from works being carried out by the contractor, we also allow time for the operators to move in. And we also have other details. I won't read them out. If necessary, I can supplement the information to members later. But different vendors have been reflecting this view to us. Although there is a 2-month rent waiver, they have a question on how you come up with the 2-month arrangement, because their idea is simple. Their request is, in fact, to have a waiver having a period equivalent to the period of closure. So can you explain the rationale to us? Thank you, Ms. Yong. I think the spirit is that we work in accordance with the established practice. The market will be closed down for some time, and when the market resumes its operation, we need to help consumers come back and get back into the habit of going to this market. So it takes time, but it actually has nothing to do with the closure period. Mr. Tommy Zhang, I need to declare, because my wife and myself are users. Well, usually my wife, but sometimes I do accompany her to the market because I live in Taiwan and I support the Taiwan market revamp. Over the past decade, well, as members who are members of the panel on food safety and environmental hygiene, you should understand that we have cross-party consensus that more resources should be put in to improve the facilities of public markets. The CE has allocated $2.2 billion. Very soon the fund will be exhausted, although we still have outstanding some here. We do have a lot of markets. I think there should be more resources. I understand the concerns of market vendors, because during the closure period, how should they deal with the loss of business? Because the market will be closed for such a long time. How are they going to make ends meet and support the family? Are there vacant stalls nearby for them to make a living for the time being? And I want to know what you have done to help them. Because for consumers, if you can't go to Taiwan market, there are other markets available. Just a 5-minute walk from Taiwan market. And I'm not concerned about consumers. What about those doing business in the market, those making a living there? How are you going to support them? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Zhang, for his comments. Well, we agree that for market vendors who are affected, we should help them. First of all, not far away, we have an FEHD market, and we also have markets further away, and if resources permit, we'll try to coordinate and help them as much as we can. Well, I don't know. There are several markets nearby. We have one in Hin King, Longhang, Sanchoi. These are not under your management. These are not your markets. But will you consider, if there are vacant stalls in these markets, you can perhaps talk to the landlord to sublet certain stalls so that as a temporary measure they can continue to make a living there because they are familiar with Taiwan, and we also have Mei Lam Estate nearby. Now I want to know whether you make an effort before works commence. Can you just take a look around the market and then start negotiating with the operators and see how many stalls are available, to see if you have suitable businesses in these markets, say selling vegetables, or say if somebody has a live poultry license. I wonder if a vacant stall can be provided for the trader to continue business there for the time being. Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for your comment. When it comes to how specifically we can help individual traders during the closure of the market, we note your view. We'll go back and think about what we can do. We'll explore our options on how we can help them. What about live poultry? For those with a live poultry license, and I'm not sure whether anyone sells live poultry there because I don't go to Taiwan market for that. I usually order and have live chickens delivered to my home. But will you consider, as a temporary measure, allowing the live poultry license holder to operate his business in another market? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the question. There are 2 live poultry stores in Taiwan, and right next to Chick-fil-A Street, opposite Chick-fil-A Street, we have another fresh provision store selling live poultry. I think it's more difficult to provision live poultry stores because we have more stringent regulations on live poultry shops, and we haven't heard a request from them. Dr. Fernando Zhang, I have a question for Undersecretary. Now, we are going to renovate the office and install AC system. That means it will be closed for 7 months and the work will be suspended, and if you don't get paid for 7 months, would you accept the proposal? It's just hypothesis. I won't answer that. But the fact is, when it comes to installing AC system in public markets or the FEHT market, rent waivers will be provided during the renovation period. Of course, that is just right because they can't use their stalls to do business. And regarding Taiwan market, the government is being lenient by offering another 2 months waiver. What about their employees? I don't know whether Undersecretary is assuming that they will continue to be paid. Because otherwise, if the whole stall ceases operation, where does the money come from? Naturally, the boss of the stall will tell his employees that we're not doing any business, so I can't pay you wages. So when we consider market renovation, we need to consider the various financial implications on various parties. It's not just about helping consumers picking up the habit after the market resumes operation. You make it sound like an extra lenient policy by offering a 2-month rent waiver. What about the actual losses? What about those working in the market? You are not factoring in their losses. So, Chairman, this is related to the financial aspect of the project. I'm suggesting that you should factor this in and perhaps consider ex gratia payment, because these are small-time traders and they work hard to make a living, not to mention the employees. And I wonder if Mr. Tommy Cheung agrees with me. I would say that the market is definitely one of the hottest inside, because even chickens faint and fish dies inside from heat. And for people working inside, they say they need to change T-shirts 3 times a day, and they keep sweating throughout the day. They drink water all the time to keep hydrated. And we have 101 markets in Hong Kong, only some 21 of them are air-conditioned. Why is the condition of these markets so poor?
From 2012 onwards, we said that we would try to get the market to have aircon installation, and now eventually we have it, but it will take ages for that to be installed. How do you expect store traders will survive the 17 months? I'm not even going to talk about the partial closure. The government officials sit in air-conditioned offices. For the entire market, the only place where there is air conditioning is the FEHD office. So you are completely divorced from reality. Can I ask you not to get paid for 7 months? You are asking these store traders to not pay their staff for 7 months. You have to step into their shoes. I need an answer. We have heard Dr. Zheng's comments loud and clear. We hope that the work will start as soon as possible. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting. When government officials came to meet with us, I asked questions just asked by Dr. Zheng. Just now, an official said to Dr. Zheng that is a hypothetical question. I am not happy with that. This is not hypothetical at all. You can foresee it. I go to Taiwan public market a lot. I live in Shatin. Store traders told me that they won't be able to run the business. And I said, well, there will be rent waivers. And they said, well, that will be for our bosses. We are employees. If we can't run our business, we have nothing to live on. And we don't know whether the boss will continue with the business afterwards. And if I find a different job for these few months, do I come back afterwards or not? Well, you said at that time that livelihood of employees is the responsibility of employers. So this is not a hypothetical question. You can clearly foresee it. My second point. I have previously said if there are shops for them to there are shops to sell vegetable or pork, but there are no beef stores, no fish stores. Tommy Cheung said that the next one is just 5 minutes. I asked him to do it. If he can use 5 minutes to go from Tai Wai to Long Hang, well, I will take my hat off for him, because if I have to do it, I have to run. Can I ask for shuttle bus service to take residents to markets that are fully operating? You may not want to take them to private markets. Well, the Undersecretary said in answer to Mr. Cheung that there are nearby private markets, and whether there are vacant stores. You said you would talk to these markets. You're self-contradicting. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're saying? We ask for shuttle bus service to go to nearby markets or FEHD markets. If a private market is under renovation, there will be support services. You ask for people to take the train from Tai Wai to go to Sha Tin and then walk to Sha Tin Market. You said it's only one stop. Have you actually gone there? It will take at least half an hour for an elderly person to do it. The market is not above the train station. Don't be so detached from reality. You might think that it's very convenient. You only have to get off at the next stop. But reality is different. Next, Elizabeth Quat. I want an answer, though. Anything to say, Undersecretary? Well, when I said it's a hypothetical question, it is in relation to what? I think Dr. Cheung may recall the question, so I'm not going to repeat it. Arrangements about operating. We have provided sufficient alternatives for store operators to operate in existing and vacant stores in FEHD markets. Yes, we're aware of limitation in choices of stores during the renovation. I'll defer to my colleagues. We understand that during the full closure, people will find it inconvenient to shop. We have conducted some surveys in the surrounding areas, Chek Fai Street, Mei Tin Road, Tai Wai Road, and Chun Nam Road, near Tai Wai Market. We found that there are 18 vegetable stores, 11 fresh produce stores, 2 for roast meat, 2 supermarkets, 100 eateries, shops selling non-food, household products, Chinese medicine. You'll find them there. When it comes to fresh produce, any fish stores, beef stores, in Mei Lam Market, you'll find them. But it's quite far away. I think it's just like what Mr. Tommy Cheung said. If you walk from Tai Wai Market, it will take about 7 to 10 minutes. Maybe Mr. Zheng will have a quicker pace. I think it's 5 to 7 minutes. My ward office is in Mei Lam Estate, so I walk past there very often. Well, if you say that I can cover that distance in 3 minutes, well, I'd have nothing to say. Maybe we should do it together. Mei Lam is closed, and there is also Long Hang Market. If you take a minibus from Taiwan, it'll take only 2 minutes. Well, I was saying, I was talking about fresh fish. Please press again, Miss Elizabeth Quat. After a long wait, we see this day. Assistant Director may remember Tong Kin Lei from Shatin, and I have had numerous meetings with you. Store operators have seen us one by one when we try to lobby them. We have got enough signature, and we still have to wait for a few years for the item to come to the Finance Committee. So how can we not support this? We've all been talking about the demands of store operators. I understand that you have been doing something. Initially, you said the full closure will be 12 months, and then later it's 8. Now it's 7. Still, full closure of 7 months is a huge impact on store operators. They work from hand to mouth, and consumer behavior may change. After the closure, they may not return to the same market. You offer them 2 months rent waiver. Still, it won't compensate their loss. They ask for the same number of months of rent waiver over the period of any closure. For the first month or 2, customers may not yet return. So please lengthen it. They're also concerned about a possible increase of rent as a result of the air conditioning system, as well as its cost apportionment. They've always had in mind that they will only pay for air conditioning fees for the size of their stores. Will you do any publicity and promotion to try to get customers to return to the market? Do you have any plans? Thank you. I thank Ms. Quat for her support. We have heard the demand of store operators. We'll continue to look into how we can help them when they encounter difficulties. There is a platform to talk about long-term support and development. Better management and publicity after the project. Well, we have $2 billion of market modernization program. I'm sure that there will be different ways to improve the situation. My question hasn't been answered. Is there any chance that the period of rent waiver will be lengthened to more than 2 months after the project is completed? You mean we can't even discuss it? And you're saying that the $2 billion is also for publicity and promotion? Give me a clear answer so that I can explain to store operators. There will be publicity to attract customers to go back to Taiwan market. The project cost is borne by the government. When it comes to operating cost, it's a user pay, so they have to bear the recurrent operating cost as an established practice. The FEHD will conduct a comprehensive review. It will cover aircon fees. And once it's decided, it will apply to all markets. What about the periods of rent waivers? We have answered. For the first 10 months, there will be a 50% waiver. So that means a full waiver of 5 months, and then 7 months, and then 2 months. So it's about 14 months. We understand that their livelihood is affected. During full closure, they may choose to operate in vacant stores in other public markets. Will provide the information and assistance. Why is it 2 months? Why can't 3, 4, 7 months? It applies to all markets. That is current practice. But still, it doesn't help store operators. Will you find other ways to help tie them over the difficult time? Mr. Wilson Orr. This is a little bit too late. We can see that the government moves very slowly. We're talking about close to $200 million. There'll be a full closure of 7 months, but in fact, the project will take 17 months. I have a number of questions to ask. First, this involves different government departments. It's led by the ASD. There will be the FSD, the EMSD, the EPD. They are also involved. But we have the mentality of departments minding their own turf, so progress will be really slow. How can you ensure that there will be coordination in order to have the project completed within 17 months? Will you consider establishing an interdepartmental working group? If there are problems, you may need to close the market fully for more than 7 months. And I see that on page 4 it says that there is a contract consultant fees of $3.7 million. What does this consultant do? Would they be able to speed up the project and to ensure that the project will not overrun? Why does it cost $3.7 million? The financial secretary said that there will be $2 billion to revitalize public markets. Is the Taiwan market included in the $2 billion? Last point I would like to ask about: after the project is completed, what about maintenance and repair of common areas?
You said that the traders will need to pay for their own AC fees. What about the maintenance and repair of common areas? Will government shoulder the cost? We mentioned $179 million that falls outside the $2 billion revitalization of market initiative. And then on page 4 of the paper, $3.7 million of consultants' fees. I'll invite the ASD to supplement. Chairman members, $3.7 million consultants' fee because the ASD has engaged a consultant for preliminary design and monitoring of works and quality assurance, works progress. And let me reassure members, because members are concerned whether there will be any delay in the works. Let me explain the mechanism. As far as government projects are concerned, apart from pricing, we also look at the past performance of contractors. Of course, if the contractors have been able to work in schedule, that would give them some merit in our consideration. And apart from the consultant, the ASD at another level would also monitor the work's progress. And we also liaise very closely with the FEHD and we have a communication mechanism. Please speak into the mic. Members are also concerned about common areas. For the user pay principle mentioned just now, some areas, such as passageways, they fall within an inalienable part of their business area. For contracted out markets, while we follow this model, the common areas falls under the responsibility of tenants. But as mentioned just now, the FEHD is going to conduct a comprehensive review, and this will also be reviewed. Well, in the interest of time, Chairman, they haven't answered me. I'm asking whether this new post will be able to take up the role of coordination. They haven't answered me. And user pay principle, I hope that you will seriously consider the financial arrangement regarding common areas. I want to know whether the director would take up the role as a coordinator, because you've created this post, but I don't know whether the work will be taken up. At the policy level, we're going to review the all the FEHD markets in Hong Kong. As for the works, we have a works team, and if the works are not carried out in a way as mentioned in the paper, this will be escalated so as to make sure that the works will be consistent. A break for 5 minutes.